Hi Titans, welcome to the Learning Styles Workshop. This workshop is part of our HSS Academic Success Workshop series hosted by the HSS Student Success Center. Today's workshop aims to do two things. We will learn about different learning styles and you will be able to determine which style comes most naturally to you. We will understand the different supplies, environments, and strategies for note-taking and studying that fit each learning style. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Before going into finding out your learning style, I'd like to preface that with information about what a learning style is and why it's useful for you to know yours. Learning styles are different ways of learning, meaning that there are multiple ways to process and learn material. We don't just learn about an object in one way, we use all of our senses to engage with an object and register mental information about it. We can also look at learning styles as preferences for learning. While we engage in multiple ways of learning, some people might have one style that they utilize most frequently. Why should we know about different learning styles? By knowing your preferences and all of the possible ways you can learn something, we can use this knowledge to enhance memory, problem solving, and productivity. Now, let's figure out which learning style you use most frequently. On our Student Success Center website, we have provided you with a learning styles quiz. This quiz tells you the one of three learning styles that you might be using more than the others. If you have not taken the quiz, I encourage you to pause this video and complete the quiz. The URL link can be found on this slide. This quiz is free and will only take about 10 minutes of your time. If you have already completed the quiz, you may continue and play in this video. Now, we'll do an overview of each learning style and what they entail. Auditory learners learn information by hearing and listening to information. A casual way of understanding this is how people remember names better than they remember faces. They engage in auditory learning when meeting people. These people might also be learners who can listen to a song and easily remember the lyrics. Auditory learners learn well when listening in a lecture or learning from conversation when they hear themselves or others speak. Visual learners learn by seeing information. These are people who remember faces better than names, or people you might describe themselves as having close to photographic memory. For these learners, they retain information well when looking at words, diagrams, or pictures. Tactile or kinesthetic learners learn by doing. These are experiential learners who engage in the form of learning where they remember the experiences they had with people, rather than the actual faces or names of the people themselves. You might also describe this as muscle memory. These learners retain information with hands-on projects and immersive experiential activities in the classroom. Again, even if you scored highest for one style and one style feels most intuitive to you, this doesn't mean that you aren't using the other learning styles to also supplement your learning. We engage in multiple learning styles when we fully learn and master a topic. Next, we'll go over note-taking skills for each learning style. Then we'll look over study skills that tap into each learning style. Again, I encourage you to not just listen for your most dominant learning style. The goal is that you build an inventory of all of the possible ways that can work for you in different types of classes and in different settings. Here's an analogy. You can think of succeeding in a class as equivalent to cooking a meal. To cook the meal, you need to go grocery shopping for a ton of different ingredients: protein, vegetables, starch, spices, etc. It's the same with learning in a class, when you utilize multiple learning strategies to learn as much as you can. For auditory learning, If you want to retain more information by listening, it would be really helpful in lecture to sit where you can hear the professor. Some professors also allow you to record lectures on your laptop, phone, or a tape recorder. If you do this, you have the option to re-listen to the lecture at a later time. Some people claim that it's helpful to listen to what the professor is saying before you write it down or before you copy everything that's written on the slides. Sometimes professors explain certain topics in more detail compared to other topics, or they verbally emphasize that a topic is important to know. These are cues for you that the information they're sharing is important and important to remember, especially for the test. Finally, since learning through conversation is particularly helpful for auditory learning, ask questions if you have them, and use opportunities during or after lecture to clarify your understanding of the material. Next, we'll review note taking for visual learning. It is helpful to sit where you can see the professor and see their slides so that you can commit that information to memory more easily. Sometimes at the beginning of lecture, professors have a slide of what their agenda for the class will be. If they do that, write down the agenda at the top of your notes to help you stay focused on the progression of the lecture. Next, taking visually digestible notes is important for visual learning. You can make section headings distinct with colors, boxes, underlining, or text formatting so that it'll draw your attention to the structure of your notes. You can also apply special formatting to draw attention to key terms so that you can remember them more easily. Lastly, we'll go over note taking for tactile learning. Tactile learning is about optimizing the experience of the classroom setting in order to make the experience more memorable. When choosing a seat in the classroom, some tactile and visual learners have said that they get distracted by movement in other areas of the classroom. It may be helpful to sit towards the side of the lecture hall or in the front to minimize distraction when in the classroom. For virtual settings, you can minimize your distractions by changing your video settings on Zoom to speaker only view. This way, you only see the professor's video during the lecture and do not get distracted by your other classmates' videos. Some tactile learners might also find that they move a lot in their seat or somehow fidget when they are learning and digesting information. If you do this, allow yourself to move if you need to. That can look like tapping your foot, chewing gum, or squeezing a stress ball. Another way to engage yourself physically is to engage both hands while you're writing or typing your notes. Now, what about those 3-hour classes? Some classes on campus are scheduled for 2 hours and 45 minutes. If you have one of these classes, you can optimize your energy for tactile learning by standing up and taking a walk during the break in the middle of the class or pausing the recorded lecture. Other plus for tactile learning is that you have the opportunity to take a study abroad course or a service learning course. Those are innovative ways to gain invaluable experiential learning opportunities. Now, we'll look over different study tips that can engage different learning styles. Again, we all use each type of learning style. So even if it's not your style you use most frequently, this could offer other possibilities for processing information until it's concrete knowledge. We'll start with reviewing study tips for auditory learning. If you had if you had decided to record the lecture, listening to the lecture is a great way to review the information. You can listen in the car on your commute or at home when you're reviewing your notes. Another option is to watch YouTube videos on the lecture topic to familiarize yourself with the information through another person's perspective. Some auditory learners are good at studying with music or background noise. So that is something to consider when crafting your ideal study environment. Other tips for studying with auditory learning strategies include reciting information aloud to commit it to memory, creating songs, rhymes to remember, list or sequence of events, or linking up with a study group to verbally discuss the information out loud. With study groups, you can ask questions to your classmates and hear the ways they explain the answers. Or you can quiz yourself on whether you can recite, remember, or explain the information by heart. To study in ways that engage visual learning, when you review your notes, it's important to set up your review in an organized and visually appealing way. You can divide up the topics you are studying into sections, designate one piece of paper for each, and create clean, readable study sheets. Like with note taking, you can use different types of text formatting, coloring, or highlighting to distinguish headers and key terms. You can also use charts and diagrams to organize information. An example is if you are comparing or contrasting two concepts or events, you can use a chart or a Venn diagram. A psychology example is if you are in a class that studies the different parts of the brain, you can draw out a brain and highlight different parts. Another useful tool for visual learning is using acronyms, writing down the first letter of every word in a list to remember all of the items in the list. And finally, if you are the type of person that likes to study with groups, you can create and refer to visual aids during your study session. Lastly, we'll go over study tips for tactile learning. Just like note taking, it is important to optimize the experience of studying itself. This means that your study environment should be spacious and comfortable. Flashcards are very effective for tactile learning. You can use them to memorize vocabulary or mix and match them based on categories. Another creative way of engaging tactile learning is combining studying with physical activity, such as reading while walking or reciting study information while working out. And similarly to note taking, stay moving if it helps you to focus and relieve excess energy. Lastly, it is important to take frequent breaks to get up, move around, and process the material you just learned. I would also like to highlight that while we've categorized different study tips based on learning style type, many of these tips also combine different learning styles. For example, creating flashcards involves the movement of reviewing the cards, but also ends with the creation of a visual aid. Another example is in study groups, you can talk with friends engaging auditory learning while also using visual aids or crafting the experiential memory of reviewing with somebody. Now that we've learned different studying and note taking strategies, think about how you can apply these strategies to your own courses. Remember, every class can involve a different combination of learning styles based on the subject of the class, whether it's lecture or discussion based, if it's in person or online, and even based on the professor's style of teaching. When trying new strategies, it is important to remember that you may need to return to the grocery shopping analogy. We often need to practice filling our shopping cart with different ingredients or learning strategies so that we can cook the meal we want. Study for different types of classes. Thank you all for watching this presentation. We hope you learned something new today and are able to apply these strategies to your study plan. Be sure to check out our other presentation on time management and test taking strategies. We wish you the best of luck and we hope you have a great semester.